All right. Hey, Film 110. I went through your lighting papers this weekend and you guys had some questions. And I figured instead of me just answering them in class or on a video, I would get some help. So, WebExed in from where are you? Narragansett?
Yeah.
Oh, from all the way in Narragansett. Haley Haynes is with me. She's going to say hi. I think this is going to work.
Hey, everybody.
So I figured we could both sort of give some answers for your questions for a few minutes. So that way you could get my opinions on stuff and Haley's opinions on stuff. So she's a senior and she's done a lot of work shooting a lot of the films for the advanced classes. And so it might be a good idea. Well, it might be a good idea. That's a stupid thing. I just thought it was a good idea to get her opinions on stuff. All right. So Haley, the first, I feel like this is a advice column show.
Yeah.
All right. The first question comes from Courtney. She says, if a scene has to have windows opened, what is the best way to prevent light reflection?
So I take it windows open, like, no curtains or anything.
I'm guessing that's what that means.
Yeah, okay. Without reflection. In my experience, it's kind of been about angles and what you're shooting. You kind of can adjust based on that. Um, One thing I'm trying to like I don't know, it can be different for every scenario really, but if you can find an angle where you're not getting as much of a reflection, or if you can use, from one angle you can maybe flag something off over to the side that prevents the reflection, that can be helpful a lot of times. Knowing where the reflection comes from.
Yeah, and just so they're clear, right? So they were asked what flags are, but some of them probably have never used them or might not have seen them before. So
Right.
it's like that big square piece of it's basically like duvetine that's on a frame that you can put in a C stand and put in front of the light, so you can sort of block out some of the areas that the light would be falling on and just really focus it more on other areas. The other thing that we talked about too in class, and I'm sure you had some experience with this, is just going to the set ahead of time and sort of knowing what you're working with before you get there. So like these students, right, they get to my house, they've never been here before. They're just like, oh, a room with all the windows, right? So they're probably not as prepared as you would be going into an advanced shoot, knowing what you're working with in regards to time of day, window location, what lights are there, and how you're going to sort of set up the scene, right?
Right, right. Like when you're really preparing for one of the advanced shoots, is you guys will eventually get to do. You're gonna want to scout these spaces beforehand if you can, or just get whatever kind of information you can about the space, just because like you're gonna run into problems with windows, depending on the time of day, lighting, all of that stuff. You're gonna want to know what you're gonna need, because if you show up to set and you've got all these reflections and no flags or anything or any way to kind of go against that, then it's like, what do you do? So it's like you want to be prepared as much as you can.
Another question's coming from Jamie. It's saying, how can we create our own lighting outdoors? Do we have the proper equipment that many cinematographers had for night shooting? So in the reading, they had to read for night shooting. So have you ever shot outside where you're using lights?
So not in a night scenario, I'm guessing this is about. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I haven't actually, yeah, I did shoot outside at night maybe once or twice. I know we did for 351, when I took the Phantom class where we shot with the Phantom Flex. We basically shot a scene outside of Keith's house for this movie called The Ruler. And and yeah, so we basically what we did out there was, I think we brought, this was way back for me, so I'm thinking way back, but we brought out maybe one or two lights, and I believe we had a key and a fill light, so one like main source of light and then one just kind of balancing it and destroying any shadows. Um and it was really only for like one scene, so it wasn't the most complex lighting out there. But I don't know, it's kind of like I said, it's tough because it's every scenario is different. But we definitely have stuff that can be used to shoot at night outside. There's been plenty of student films where they can mimic street lights, or there's even been like police lights mimicked with the Geminis, which are really great for that. Um, And then like daytime shooting outside too, like we have reflectors and stuff. So I think that we definitely have a lot of stuff. Um,
I think the biggest thing is though is like most of the time, even when we've shot as a class shoot, and probably you guys in your other classes, you're sort of close to a power source, and there hasn't really been too many productions that have said, "Hey, I want to bring these lights in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere." You know, Ashton shoot that was shot, and I forget, were you part of that or not? Some you were, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
I was on set for one day.
so they were
Um,
using generators, right? Because they didn't have power and they needed them. So
yeah,
if you're far away from electricity, you most likely need it. So some of these 110 shoots, sometimes they want to do something like that. And the only thing that we can offer them is the generators to bring them in the woods. But even that's very limited because you can probably light what's close to the camera, but you're probably not going to be able to light what's in the background to see that you're actually in the woods because there's
right.
not enough light going on there.
Yeah, and like Ashton shoot, I actually that's right. I was a grip on that too. So
There you go.
yeah, so I did a lot of lighting and night lighting as well. I didn't really think of this because it's kind of like not really the equipment that you guys will quite have access to yet. But like the Geminis and stuff like that. And I remember we lit this one scene in the woods and we basically were trying to create moonlight. So we put this Gemini basically as high up as it could possibly go and just we put it really high up and onto like a nice moonlight color. And we kind of created like you know how the Ari lights have those barn doors that flip in and out. Um, so basically, we created that with flags around the Gemini to make it more like moonlight, like a spotlight kind of thing.
So
And that was really
so
cool.
just so they know, so you sort of narrowed the field of view of where the light's coming out, right? And so they've used the
Right.
DP lights that have barn doors. So it would almost be
Yeah.
like closing those barn doors just to let because otherwise those Geminis are big in regards to the size of the face and they would just be blowing light out like this.
Yeah, so to get it more focused and more like moonlight-esque, we kind of did that. And we had like sandbags like balancing all over this thing. Like it was rigged like crazy, but like we were working with some professional professional grip and a professional cinematographer from LA. So they were really cool and they were showing us some really cool stuff. So that was something that like was kind of beyond what I've done. But it was definitely a really cool experience and it was all done with stuff that we do have at URI. So like you can create cool stuff like that out in the woods. I mean, it gets tricky with like power and stuff, and that's why not a lot of student films have been done like that, but it's definitely can be done.
Cool. Nick was writing, are there more efficient ways to light a scene compared to the tools and methods we used in the in-class shoot? So I think that's sort of touching on a little bit of what you said already in regards to what they'll have access. Like, right, well, like teaching this in-class shoot is a little bit restrictive because they only have access to certain things and not so much in regards to shaping the light like you were talking about, except a little bit of black wrap and no flags and things like that. So, do you have any suggestions in regards to different methods besides sort of like the basic equipment stuff of that what they can look forward to that you haven't already talked about?
Well, definitely, since you're limited in equipment, one thing that's been really helpful whenever I'm limited or like my crew has been limited, is using like white walls and stuff and bouncing light, because that can actually help so much. Just pointing like this, maybe you only have access to one like DP kit and you've got like just that light and it's not quite enough light. Where you like to fill the space. So maybe you can bounce it off a white wall. And depending on how you have the camera set up and stuff, that could end up making it, just a little brighter. So it's kind of like play with your space, use what you have. You really don't need a ton of fancy lights and stuff to make a movie. Like there's been plenty of movies shot with just like the simplest things. And so I definitely use white walls. Even like they even tell grips like don't wear white to set because even that like that bounces light. So it's like you can literally play with like almost any surface around you and see what happens.
And going off that too, right? And this is something that some people mention in regards to what your actors are wearing. We've had issues in certain classes. I think it might have been last year that you're dealing with a low light situation and your lead characters are dressed in very dark colors. And so you can't even really see, like, their face might be illuminated. Okay. But you lose the rest of their body because everything in the room is dark. So not only do the lights, are important here, but also like what you're shooting, right? If you're in a dark room with a dark couch and you're in a dark and people wearing dark clothing, right? You're going to have a lot of hard time there getting an image where you can actually see everything.
Right.
What about what are different ways to tackle the problem of constant changing of exterior light during shooting? So shooting outside during the day where the sun is moving or clouds are coming in and out. Have you dealt with that before?
So if you're going to be shooting exteriors during the day, you've definitely got to have a solid plan and a solid schedule because yeah, that light's constantly changing. And the second like something goes wrong, like you're gonna have to make up for that. I was on set of Guap Chasing, a music video I directed last semester, and I was shooting outside exteriors for a lot of it. Actually, we spent a whole day doing exteriors in Providence in that area, and I had a pretty small crew, but it was still like I had lighting people, I had script supervisor, cinematographer, AC, all that. And we were shooting, and in the middle of the day with sunlight and everything, beautiful day, it was going great. And my script supervisor was using my phone for playback, and she dropped it into the sewer. And so there I had to kind of decide, like, all right, am I going to spend, 30 minutes to an hour or even longer trying to fish my phone out of the sewer? And burn all this daylight, or am I going to go and get the rest of my shots and not waste time? And so we made the decision to spend like 10 minutes trying to get it out, and after that I was like, all right, we got to call it. We left it in Providence and we just kept going. Didn't want to lose our daylight. The sun was shifting, and so it's like you just got to keep going.
And then what about though in regards to if you're shooting a scene and you're shooting there over a long period of time and the sun is slowly moving, have you sort of dealt with trying to make that consistent in any way over a long day of shooting?
I personally haven't dealt with that too much, because when I was shooting outside, it didn't really need to match up like that, just because it wasn't going to be like a continuous thing since
Right.
it was a
Yeah.
music video. Um,
Well, one of the things that I think,
but
oh, go ahead.
oh, but for like Gina's film, we shot like a couple scenes outside. We knew like what time of day and stuff we wanted them at, so it's just kind of like making sure that you're consistent with what you're looking for. You know what I mean? Like you can't go and shoot an afternoon scene in morning. Like you've got to actually shoot it to make it at least look like it's afternoon.
Well, the other thing we've done in regards to sun, and this has happened in a lot of class shoots, I feel like I remember it happening in 16 millimeter, is that we start a scene and the sun's in one place and we shoot the wide, and then it's time to move into close-ups, and you can clearly tell that the angle of the sun has changed. And so the light falling on the person's face isn't really the same. And so a lot of times I'll say to them, all right, how close are you in this close up? And they'll tell me. And I was like, okay, so you do realize that that tree behind the actor right there is not going to look any different than if we turn now the scene this way and you use that tree in the background, because no one's going to be able to tell. I mean, that's going to be out of
Right.
focus. And as long as we see something similar in the background, no one's, they're going to see the difference between the light shining on this side and shining on this side, but they're not going to know that that bush in the background isn't that tree. So that's another way to sort of manipulate that if you need to. So that's why, like, a lot of times most people assume or plan for shooting their wide shots first, and then we know which wide we're going to use, and we try and match the wide in regards to continuity, all types of continuity. All right, awesome. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Anytime.